Hi, I'm Commissioner Christy McCormick of the EAC. March is Women's History Month, and as a part of EAC's recognition of this month, I'm interviewing women leaders in elections about their experience in the field, serving voters across the nation. It's been great to hear from officials in different parts of the country and to learn from their experiences. For our final interview for Women's History Month, I'm pleased to speak with Diana Moorman, General Registrar and Director of Elections for James City County, Virginia, which is my home jurisdiction. Hi, Diana. How are you?
Hi there. I'm well. How are you?
Doing great. Diana and I have known each other for a long time. I'm not sure when you started in the General Registrar's office, but it's been almost every election that I've seen you in person because I almost always vote absentee, and that absentee precinct is in your office. So it's always great to see you on election day. And I'm always somewhere in the country, so it's nice to be able to see your smiling face every time I go to vote.
It's good seeing you too. I've been here for about 16 years now, so I think we've known each other for quite some time.
Yeah,
it's always a treat.
Probably that 16 years, because I think the previous general registrar, you were his assistant, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I used to see you back in your old building. You're now in a different building, so which still isn't big enough.
For the time being.
Yeah, that's right. So let me start out by asking you, how did your career in public service begin?
Well, my initial career began with, the funny thing with elections is when I was 18, I had no idea what it was about. I knew that my parents always voted and they always said, hey, you need to be involved with this. So I took that, and a friend of mine said, do you want to go to the courthouse with me and help collect ballots and help collect all the materials coming in from the precincts? So I said, sure, no problem. And we had a great night visiting with everybody, the elected officials, and all of the election officers that were bringing the things in. Unbeknownst to me, then I ended up going into college and then working for the airlines, where as a complaint resolution official. So it's prepared me, and someone said, hey, there's an opening at the elections office. So I started out as a volunteer, and then I worked my way up to part-time, and then full-time, then finally the deputy position. And then ultimately I've been appointed. I've been in this office in this position now since January 1st, 2016. So my first entry into actually leading the elections with my office was the presidential primary of 2016. So hit the ground running, and it's been something different ever since.
And now you've got two crazy presidential general elections under your belt. So
I do.
It's go ahead.
It's been very fascinating. The things that have changed over the years is just astronomical.
Yeah, so that actually leads me into my second question. What are some of the notable industry changes you've seen since you started in elections? I guess that's 16 years now.
Yes. Notable. I was sitting here thinking about this earlier, and one of the things that has just changed dramatically was when they changed the ability to be able to vote, or I'm sorry, register to vote online. And that changed our world significantly. It went from a mostly paper world to an electronic world overnight. And that just kind of catapulted us into technology and all of the pluses and minuses of it. The other thing, again, with technology is changing from paper poll books to electronic poll books, and learning the equipment, the nuances of it, what security needs to be done for it. And just the incredible law changes that happen just every single year with special courts, etc. And just this past year in Virginia, we had over 59 election laws that we had to implement. And this year will be not as much or not as significant, but there are still quite a few changes as well that we will be looking forward to July 1st. It's just never ending, and especially when they have delayed enactments on them for them to go into effect on the 2022. But I would have to say that technology is what is the driving factor of changes for us for the election timeframe.
Yeah, and actually I saw that the governor signed another 3 election bills just, I think, yesterday, right? So today or yesterday, it's crazy.
Yes, it is. It's setting us up to not have a day off from the beginning of, I guess, Labor Day through to the middle of November.
Yeah, insane. But that's the world of elections, right?
It is. Roll
So,
with the punches.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So what are some of the changes or initiatives you've implemented throughout your career in James City County?
Just when I started, it was streamlining the documents and the way that they were delivered out to the polling places. And then going into when I got appointed, I started immediately with something that we call the roundtable or the chief roundtable. And we get the chief election officers as well as the assistants. And we invite them all to a day that is typically the Saturday after the election. So it's still fresh in everyone's minds. And we just bring coffee and donut holes and fruit, basically. And we sit around and we discuss what happened, what worked, what didn't work, and what we can do to improve on the next election and moving forward. And that gives a lot of ownership to the chiefs and assistant chiefs. And we come together as a team to figure out how we can better serve the community and each other. It's a long day for everyone, and working together is a huge thing. So the roundtable has been fantastic. I do it, it's typically about 9 slides, and we end up taking about 2 hours for those 9 simple slides, but they are so filled with discussion. It's very productive, and we've gotten a lot out of it. Huge changes have been made because of these roundtable discussions. And the chiefs don't get to talk to each other as much as they would like to. So this roundtable really is a helpful thing for everybody to come together and see what is a unique situation for just their precinct, or it is kind of a systematic issue that we need to address. The other thing that we started, and I implemented this year, is an election task force with our police department. And we went through and came up with a list of all of the arrestable offenses that are unique to elections. And the police officers in the police department are not familiar, and as they should not need to be, with election laws that are so unique to specific election days and the voting process. So they were trained specifically on what worked, or rather what were arrestable offenses, what they had the right to do, and what our chief election officers have the right to do in the polling places. So we worked together, we had the training for that, and we had them activated from 5 o'clock in the morning until I gave them permission to be done at the end of the evening. Luckily, we didn't need them, but they were on standby and they gave updates throughout the day. So it was good to have that peace of mind, and the voters knew that we had that in place as well.
And I was honored to sit in on one of your election roundtables this past year. I think it was after the primary, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And I was just fascinated by, all the statistics that you provided for your election and judges, and, just the conversation over the, problems that they saw at the polls and how they could be addressed. And the other thing I thought was fascinating was the medical corps that you employed this year to deal with the coronavirus. I thought that was really interesting.
Yes, we were approached by the state and encouraged to reach out to the Medical Corps of Virginia and to see if they'd be willing to assist us with teaching proper PPE procedures and helping with social distancing at the polls. And we did use them for all 3 elections. I'm sorry, for the 2 elections, June as well as for November. And the March primary was right when everything was hitting, right before everything closed down. So it worked out well, and I was pleased to know that they were there. We did have a few physicians that were part of that, and then also some others that were medically trained. So that worked out well. And
yeah, and just the conversation that goes on in those meetings. I just, to have that free flow of trade of information between the the election officials in different polling places and what they're seeing and how we can address this differently and how things worked out. I just thought that was a great idea. And I wish more jurisdictions did that, sort of a post-mortem of the election and getting ready for the next election.
Yes, and I actually go through my notes and go through my slideshow, and that helps me prepare for the next election as well, because it is fresh in our minds, and it's not something, hey, let's, most of the time people say, let's go ahead and do something right before the next election. But before the next election, it's already forgotten the little nuances that
Right.
change how we operate. So, and I actually took a poll and said, hey, would you guys like to do this during the day, during a work week, or in the evening, so that you have your Saturdays free? And it was vast majority of the people voted for Saturday morning. So that's what we do, is we continue to work even after the election on weekends.
Yeah, and in Virginia, we have elections all the time. We don't get any time off here in Virginia. There are major elections like every year. So, you know, some states you get a break, but not here.
Well, we even, as we speak, there's a special election in one of the House districts in the western part of the state.
Right.
So it's nonstop, and we actually have the longest voting process of any state in the country as well. We're 45 days of early voting.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is.
Changing
it's very taxing.
It is. It is. I don't know how you keep people volunteering and helping you at the polls, because it's a big job.
We have a very dedicated team, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is finally being recognized on the state level that we need to have more assistance here in the offices on the local level. And without that additional staffing, we will not have a successful election year. And that is the one stressor that we have moving forward, is finding staff that is dedicated and willing to put in the hours when needed.
So that kind of leads me to my next question. What advice as a woman in elections do you have for other women who may be interested in a career in elections or in public service?
My advice would be to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you have the confidence, and make sure that you know that you have the ability to do whatever it is that you set your mind to. For me, for example, I started out volunteering and I had no idea that this is where it was going to lead me. And I am very happy that it led me here. And just go into it with confidence, knowing that you can do it, and knowing that this is, interestingly, a world that you can very much sink your teeth into, male or female, right, and do it. If you do it correctly, then people will respect you. And it's been very rewarding.
Yeah, that's so true. And there are so many opportunities to volunteer if you don't know if this is the route that you want to go on. You know, we need help in elections everywhere. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities, and it can lead to elections. I always say, you know, once you get into elections, it's hard to leave elections because it is very addicting in a way. But it also could lead to other places, other jobs in public service.
Very much so. And the one thing here is they said, oh, well, what kind of education background do you have to have? And it's not necessarily the educational background. Some people could have PhDs in one area, and it would have no effect on what we do here, because it is so focused on the election world, on election laws. And it is just the opportunity to start from the ground up and work your way into whatever position that you want to do. And I think that that is a good thing about elections, is just knowing that we teach you along the way how to do every single one of the positions.
Right, because you might have to step up at any given time to do something else. So everybody needs to know everything.
That's exactly right.
And I bet your complaint adjudication or office experience with the airline was great experience preparing you for elections.
Yes, when I was applying for the position, I said, well, oh my gosh, what happens if we have angry voters? And I say, wait a second, I handled telling 300 people that the flight was overbooked by 50 and that the flight was going to be delayed by 5 hours, and nobody was going to make their connections, and we weren't paying for hotels. So
right.
They each have their individual. I do it, smile on my face.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's great experience. So, and finally, if you remember, can you speak about your first time voting? Do you remember the first time you voted?
Yeah, I do actually. I was in Dallas, and it was the presidential year for the Perot Bush
Wow.
election, and that was my first election. So I remember going in. I was in Irving, and I went into one of the polling places and asking. They had asked me if I was registered by party, and I thought that was just. I wasn't used to it because obviously it was my first election, and I think it was a little bit of a daze of them going because there were such long lines, and uh, I was looking to go elsewhere, but I was so excited to get that I voted sticker.
That's the most important part for a lot of people. We've
It
heard
is.
that over and over again. It's so funny that everybody wants their I voted sticker. So, yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. Do you remember what kind of machine you voted on, or did you vote on paper?
No, it was not paper. It was lever machine, I believe.
Oh, wow. It's still a
I
machine.
can't attest to that. For honestly, I don't remember. It was quite a few years
Well,
ago.
well, we won't go there. Well, thank you, Diana, for joining me in this interview today. And I want to thank you for your great service to me as a county resident here and to all the voters. And great job this year in tough circumstances. And I wish you all the best with all the new changes that are going on in Virginia.
Thank you very much for having me. We are constantly changing, and some of the things that we're doing, I'm just so thankful that it is for the side of the voter. And we just have to be thoughtful with the process on how we get from point A to point B without overshooting our mark too far to keep us on track as well. So thank you for having me. It was a treat,
Thank you
as
for,
always.
I appreciate it. It's great to see you, and I'm sure we'll see each other again soon.
Definitely so.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.